You mentioned impeachment.
Yes.
You mentioned the I word. We've
Yes.
talked to you a couple of times about your plans to impeach Donald Trump. Where are we now with that? Has that moved forward, or are we still? Because I will say there was a moment when you looked at the Comey testimony and you looked at a lot of stuff. We as a nation were sort of caught up in that sort of fervor over it. And I'm not saying that it's cooled off, but I definitely think that it's important that we keep people going after it.
Well, let's start with the most recent thing that we've done. There was talk, and it went beyond talk. Actually, it was published that there was some idea that the president might pardon himself. There's been some notion that impeachment might allow the president to be exempt. So that's not true, of course. I don't believe that the president is exempt such that he can commit a crime and then pardon himself. I just don't believe that.
I'd like to think that our justice system is a little more sound than that.
But so as to make things clear, because there are constitutional scholars that say that the Constitution really doesn't address it, yesterday we filed an article of amendment to the Constitution to amend Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution to indicate that the president cannot issue a reprieve or pardon to himself or for himself. That makes it clear that he can't do it. Now, I hope we'll never have to use it. I didn't file it so that it would be used right away or be taken up right away, but such that it would be there in the event a rogue president, and by the way, I understand it should be roguish president, but if we have a rogue president, I prefer to use the word this way, a president who is dishonest. Rogue means dishonest and unprincipled. If you've got a rogue in the White House, we can use this to prevent him from doing a roguish thing. It would be roguish for a president to pardon himself.
A president who commits a crime and then pardons himself and his entire staff, that is not a democracy.
That is.
I don't know what you define that as. Roguish is good, but it is not a democracy.
Well, you have, at that point, if you allow this, you have allowed everybody to be under the law, subject to the law, except the president of the United States of America. And that is not a democratic principle that I would want to see implemented. So I'm against it. Now, to continue with this, I think that we have a unique opportunity to do this in terms of presenting articles of impeachment. The unique opportunity exists because I have signed on to articles of impeachment with Mr. Sherman, who is also a co-sponsor of the amendment to the Constitution to prevent the president from pardoning himself, along with Mr. Moulton. We've done this. I'm waiting to see if these articles are going to be taken up by the Senate, by the House Judiciary Committee. If the House Judiciary Committee acts, then there's not a need to take impeachment to the floor. But if the House Judiciary Committee does not act, then there will be a need. And I feel the sense that the House Judiciary Committee is not going to act. And that sense is causing me to believe that we are much closer to taking articles of impeachment to the floor than I had hoped we would be. I was hoping that the House Judiciary Committee would have some movement. So I will take it to the floor. And by the way, whether anybody else votes for impeachment or not, there will be one vote.
Yeah.
I assure you I will do it. And I'm doing it because it's really the right thing. And history has shown us that when you're doing the right thing, the righteous thing, you can be a majority of one, because history will vindicate you. Anybody who votes to impeach this president when we bring those articles of impeachment to the floor will be vindicated by history. He is a corrupting influence on the body politic. You look at what's happened in that White House since he's been there. You've got the Attorney General who has had to recuse himself. You've got his deputy who had to appoint a special counsel. You've got his son-in-law who is engaged in a questionable meeting with Russians about a campaign and the possibility of some sort of quid pro quo. His son is the person who brought the son-in-law to the meeting. You had his campaign manager at that meeting. Before he got off to a good start, he fired Miss Yates because she would not agree to what many scholars have said was an unconstitutional policy that he was trying to implement with regards to Islam. He has wreaked havoc across the length and breadth of the White House. And at some point, a corrupting influence has to be extricated. The means by which it's extricated is impeachment. He has also obstructed justice. When he fired the person who was investigating the Russians for their involvement in the presidential election and went on national TV and confessed, that was sufficient for obstruction of justice charges to be brought against him in the Congress. So
I agree. I think that's a
it.
slam dunk. I think you're right. That's a slam dunk. Absolutely, that was obstruction of justice. And not only that, with the how soon we forget because there's so much stuff happening. But his son putting out the emails where he took a meeting with the Russians to try and get opposition. That is, on Hillary Clinton. That is collusion. Whether or not that is treason, that's another conversation. But that is, by definition, that is collusion. You are colluding with another country to corrupt our system. Like, that is, by admission, collusion.
Well, you do have a little bit more evidence to support it when he indicated that he loved it. He gave a very positive response to the offer that was made. So in a sense, he gave his verbal acceptance. It will be interesting, in my opinion, to see how they all respond to the inquiries that are being made. But here is a point that is very clearly something that should have been considered. What they did was probable cause enough for a grand jury to investigate. If we had a prosecutor who was looking into this with clear vision and decided, I'm taking this before a grand jury to investigate what happened, you can bring every one of them before a grand jury. You get them in there, they've got to tell the truth. If they don't speak truthfully to the grand jury, then they've committed another offense. And when you take people before a grand jury, it's seen as serious. When you go before a committee of the House, it's seen as something that's political.
Yeah.
You take the politics out when you take people before a grand jury, and a prosecutor could have taken them before a grand jury.